Tarrant County Master Gardener Association has partnered with the Tarrant Regional Water District to encourage water conservation. TRWD maintains 4 area lakes and pipelines needed to provide surface water to local water treatment plants so they can clean that water to meet drinking standards for our communities. They also work with many cities in Tarrant County, such as Fort Worth, Arlington, Mansfield, and many others, to provide water conservation programs to the community. Conservation is an important water supply strategy to help meet the needs of our growing population. There are currently 2.3 million people living in Tarrant County, and this is expected to double over the next 50 years. At SaveTarrantWater.com, you can sign up for free weekly watering advice custom to your location. If you're a resident of Tarrant County, you can sign up for a free sprinkler's checkup where a licensed irrigator comes to your home, provides a comprehensive evaluation of your system with recommendations to reduce water waste. There's also an event calendar where you can find information about future classes and workshops. So be sure and check out SaveTarrantWater.com to sign up for their free services.
Say thank you for joining us tonight for greenhouse classes. To me, this is a perfect time to discuss the class because it's a great time of year to set one up. So let's take a look at that PowerPoint. This is Hobby Greenhouse class. And it is put on by the Master Gardeners and AgriLife Extension classes. So greenhouses, they are a controlled environment. You can do propagation in them over winter tropicals, and it does help extend your growing season. So when we look at greenhouse management, here are some things we'll look at: the definition and getting started, planning a greenhouse, what styles are available, the different kinds of frames for greenhouses, some operating systems and accessories that you might like, and of course, watering. The definition of the greenhouse structure. I'll move my little picture off the bar here. A structure designed for the protection of tender or out-of-season plants with regulated temperature, humidity, and ventilation against excessive cold and heat. A greenhouse can range from a small room carrying a few plants over the winter to an immense heated glass building called a hothouse or conservatory, covering acres of ground and used for forcing fruits, flowering plants, and vegetables out of season. Usually a glass or plastic enclosed structure with a framing of aluminum, galvanized steel, or such woods as redwood, cedar, and cypress. It's heated partially by sun and artificial means. It's a controlled environment that can be adapted to the needs of particular plants, such as orchids. Oops. I think I may have hit the button again. So when you get started, the lure of a greenhouse is powerful. When you walk inside and you work in the soil and tend your plants, oblivious to the weather outside. And sometimes that's partially true because in the heat of summer, you do feel the heat still. A place where seasons and climates don't matter. You can grow species that you've never grown before and try new gardening techniques in that controlled environment. You can research and build your own. You can use step-by-step plans. You can buy a kit that you still have to put together, and sometimes you'll have to get a contractor to help build it for you. But you first must select an appropriate size where there's plenty of sunlight, and then determine what type of greenhouse you want, the size, the style, and what material is going to cover it. So when you're planning your greenhouse, you're going to assess your needs. How big of a greenhouse do you need? The size of your property may indicate the size of the structure. But a rule of thumb is, if you buy a greenhouse based solely on your current gardening expectations, it may be too small within a year. Is your purpose of a greenhouse to overwinter house plants, or are you trying to grow some vegetables and flowers? A warm greenhouse that permits maximum light isn't necessary for foliage houseplants. If you use the greenhouse for both, take the sunniest location. So when you're planning your greenhouse, how elaborate do you need your structure? You can build a simple structure using PVC and plastic. They're easy to assemble, portable, and you can move them to different parts of the garden as the need arises. If you want a more elaborate structure, you can use a polycarbonate or fiberglass covering with cedar or redwood for the framing and walls, or a glass enclosed structure with a cement foundation, heating, and electrical system. These are very expensive and not really a do-it-yourself project for that glass cement foundation one. But here are some different shapes, and we'll be going into those structures. So is a building permit necessary, and are there local design ordinances? You really need to check with your city to make sure, and your homeowners association, so that your HOA may tell you that you can have a greenhouse, but it has to be situated in a specific spot. So visibility, it comes into the visibility thing. But if you are using the basic rule of thumb, if it's portable and you can take it apart, you shouldn't need a permit. If you install running water, heat, electricity, any kind of cement foundation, you really should consider a permit. Don't really take our word for it. Please do check with your local building code and sometimes your insurance to make sure that it's going to be covered for you. Oops. So how does it cost? How much does it cost to maintain that greenhouse? The cost to maintain a greenhouse and supply it with heat, water, and electricity depends upon the energy cost of your area. So that what type of greenhouse you build and how you plan to use it makes a big difference. To maintain your greenhouse in the winter using a small portable, like 115-watt heater, one should start the season late in October or November and continue it through February and really early March. To maintain your greenhouse in the summer, cooling, use whatever you can to shade the greenhouse from the midday sun, and possibly install exhaust fans, a water cooler, or some people consider it a swamp cooler. So where should it be positioned? Unless it's a portable model, it's there to stay. The first consideration is sunlight, at least 6 hours of direct sun per day. Note any trees, fences, or other obstacles. And remember that after June 21st, the sun starts getting lower and lower on that horizon. So you can see how that shadow is going to change if you position your greenhouse over here. They're actually showing you that this side, which is probably the southern, was the better choice to make for it. And then they also showed a possibility of a lean-to in 2 different spots on this particular one. Consider the drainage and find a spot there that's going to be nice and level, and how much access does it have to water and electricity. And then consider any difficulty that you may have walking to that greenhouse during inclement weather. And I can attest to that because mine's on level, but I have to walk down a small slope to get to it. And in an icy storm, it can be pretty dangerous. So your materials that you're going to take a look at for your greenhouse. You've got the style of greenhouse you select depends how permanent you want the structure to be, whether it will be freestanding or attached to the house. Attached, also called a lean-to, This type of greenhouse is an extension of the home. There's usually direct access to the house, and water and electricity are easily extended to the structure. So over here, she definitely has it on a fence. But again, it's allowing her to work in that little section in there. And I believe she's trying to save specific shrubs that are right there. But she's got a nice little vent up at the top, allowing for that extra ventilation to come through. Over here on the left, you've got a nice lean-to attached to this building, an exterior door, and whether there's a window inside that they can see in the building or that there's another door from the inside of the building coming into that lean-to. This one is also a lean-to, very easily constructed PVC pipe that's not glued so that during the summer it can be totally taken apart, some shelving units set up, and close to an electrical outlet. Covered with your plastic and just clips onto your PVC. Here, the whole front piece is Velcroed so that when these clips are taken down, the door is Velcroed for night, and here's the heater placed inside. And I was told that she actually turned this thermometer around, so every morning, sitting there having her breakfast, she could look to see how warm or cool was that greenhouse. And it did overwinter all of her begonias and everything beautifully. So an A-frame greenhouse. It's simple to construct because the A-frame can be built in sections on the ground and then raised into place and covered. Although the shape is ideal for heavy snow, it provides limited headroom, and they do say it's difficult to ventilate. I have not been in an A-frame that's this structured like this, so I don't really know about the ventilation of it, but it seems like you could put a vent or something in this area. Although with the way the panel is built, it might not be able to lift properly. The Gothic arch, the roof line is extremely decorative, looks great in the yard. This style is a good choice for regions with lots of rain and snow. You can see it'll have that automatic runoff for rain and snow, similar to the A-frame, but a little bit cuter type structure there. And in this one, look at those nice vents here, helping allow for heat to escape during the summer. A span roof. This freestanding style is the most popular and usable shape of any greenhouse. The interior layout is extremely practical with easy access. So of course, this one is your, I always think of it as the A-frame, but it is not. It is a spanned roof structure. A hoop house is very reliable. It also helps keep off excessive rain, and it blocks the wind well. And it raises the temperatures for during the winter season. Because again, your heat coming in going to help heat up your whole interior beautifully for you. And they're pretty easy to build. Coverings. One of your most important decisions is the choice of material to cover your greenhouse. You'll want a material that will let in the maximum amount of light while allowing the least amount of heat to escape. As well, it must be strong enough to withstand wind, hard rain, and sometimes hail. Glass is the preferred traditional material for performance. It lasts indefinitely, but does become brittle with age. Glass is breakable, therefore more difficult and expensive to install. It requires a much sturdier frame than your plastic covered hoop houses, or they're even saying plastic covered greenhouses. The plastic films. The greenhouse covered with film plastic is 1/6 to 1/10 the cost of that glass structure. Many resist yellowing lasting 3 to 5 years. It's available in many thicknesses, and of course, the thicker the film, the more expensive. But please be sure to look for the one that has UV protection. Therefore, you're going to get more years out of it. Another way to reduce heat loss is to double layer the plastic, creating an air pocket for insulation. And how they'll do that is this, when it's rolled down, you then throw another whole piece of plastic over it, and they have a machine that is a air blower, and you'll connect it in between to where the seams here have to be fairly tight, because once you turn that blower on and in between those two layers, it blows up a little bit, forming that air layer to help block the cold out of it. It's a pretty good little invention that they come up with. Rigid plastics for your greenhouse. Fiberglass, acrylic, and polycarbonate are available in corrugated and flat forms. Both can be used on a curved structure. You saw it on the Gothic one back there. Shatterproof and resist hail damage to varying degrees. So pretty cool. Light transmission through fiberglass rigid panels is roughly equal to that of glass, unlike the plastic. Fiberglass covering requires less cooling than glass covering. Acrylic transmits light better than polycarbonate, but polycarbonate is stronger. So the frame that you'll want to look at. Most frames are made from wood, aluminum, galvanized steel, and PVC. Lots of good structure out there. Let's take a look at a few. So your galvanized steel, most commercial greenhouses have galvanized steel frames because they're longer lasting, low cost, require less framework than any other framing material. The steel greenhouses are typically covered with a polycarbonate, polyethylene film. Be sure that any steel tubing greenhouse that you purchase is made with tubing that is protected from greenhouse's normal humid and corrosive atmosphere and designed to support heavy weight. The steel's greatest value is its strength. Its other big advantage is price. So when you pass some of the large greenhouses out there, you'll be noticing most of them are the steel covered in the polyethylene. An aluminum frame. It's available in a variety of colors and has low maintenance requirements. It has a higher initial cost and is most often used with glass and rigid plastic for glazing in structures. It does not have the strength of steel. So if you're in a very high wind area, you might want to rethink that. And look for the engineered shapes that are designed to increase the frame's strength. So again, a high wind area, start looking at what your framing is made of and how it's going to hold up during that type of a season. Wood is the most commonly used either for sunrooms and homemade greenhouses. The redwood and cedar are used because of their natural resistance to the elements, and they are attractive. Wood frames are generally much larger and heavier than the equivalent metal frames, and they increase the amount of shadow in the greenhouse. They're very attractive. Wood does still have a limited lifetime in the greenhouse's damp atmosphere before it starts to deteriorate. And I think the one thing reading this reminded me of was they are beautiful, but they have more shadow. So just keep that in mind when you look at where your space is. And for me, mine is placed under a pecan tree because in the winter without the leaves, I get the sun in my greenhouse. But I don't have wood. So again, it would have added the limb shadowing with the wood. Think it over when you're looking at where you're going to put it. A PVC pipe greenhouse, they've become increasingly popular. The main advantage is their low cost, portability, and the ease of installation. It's not as strong as metal or the wood greenhouse frames. But when you think of being able to set it up like the one we saw that was the lean-to and take it down for the summer, it has a great advantage. This one right here is one that you saw earlier, and it actually is a permanent greenhouse. So they've got it built to where all they do is remove the shade cloth on it for during the winter. So you can make it a permanent or portable. Let's take a look at some of the operating systems that you'll be using within your greenhouse. The first one is flooring. The floor of your greenhouse should allow easy drainage. Gravel and brick or concrete stepping stones laid over sand are a great choice. You'll want to lay a sheet of woven weed barrier under the floor covering to prevent weed growth. The wood slats, I don't know if y'all have seen how cute they are and they make little walkways. Well, just remember, they can get very slippery when wet. So again, your concrete or some brick, this one has the pebble topped stones in it. And I did the sand base with a greenhouse fabric that is built for flooring. And I've had it, I want to say my greenhouse is 8 or 9 years old. And this year my flooring has started buckling. So my sand is shifting. I've got to pull all that back and repack that sand and relay that flooring. So again, this one looks like it'd be a little bit easier to maintain than having to go through all that. But I love it. Another part of your operating system is ventilation. The ventilation is the single most important requirement for a greenhouse. Your system will keep temperatures in the greenhouse at a reasonable level in the summer. And winter ventilation has a whole different need to it, because we'll get into that in a minute with heaters. But in these, you can see they've got top ventilations. And here we've got the levelured panels that open up if it's on a timer. If not, you manually come in with a crank bar and open it. And back here, they've got a nice fan to pull that air through. On mine, I've got three top openings, and I have a levelure panel on the side. So when I open my levelure, it pulls that air up through the top of my greenhouse for me. So heating, it is necessary if you plan to use your greenhouse throughout the year. If you're using your greenhouse to start seedlings and root cuttings in the spring, supplemental heating might not be necessary if you're using heat mats. The smaller models can be adequately heated with electric heaters. Just remember, with a heat, and this is the kind of heater I use, watering. When you're watering, I move my heater every time out so that I can water my plants on the side and not have to worry about getting any splashes onto it. But a larger greenhouse, you'll want to consider a nice gas heater. And again, when it says it's best to use a vented heater, especially because of gases, the harmful emission from the gas, you're not going to buy one without it. They're going to come with a ventilation that'll go up through your roof or out through the side of the greenhouse for you. And this is what we use in the big greenhouse that I volunteer with the stars in. It's got the large gas heater that's vented out the side of the building. An operating system, cooling. So here are three excellent pictures of how they have used small AC, window AC units, or a larger window AC unit to cool down the greenhouse. This one, I believe, is considered a swamp cooler, that you'll see the tubing here. There's a pump inside that pumps the water to the top and down these sides, all three sides there from this one little thing for water. And over here, I noticed that this one has a tubing coming out the back here. I don't know if that is for the water condensation that's dropping off when they have too much water inside of their unit. But pretty cool, yeah. And I don't have cooling in mind. My greenhouse is normally empty for the summer. I might have some succulents in there and some cactus. So your shade cloth, it's used by professionals. It's used by a little bit of everybody to cool during those long, hot summers. It's inexpensive and it's good for providing some shade for the plants that you're not removing from your greenhouse. Because I know you saw it here on the lean-to. Here it was on the span roof. And then this one is just helping show you an open hoop with shade cloths so that whatever plants they're working on under here, that they stay just that little bit cooler for the time that they're in that particular hoop house. Benches make a difference in the ease of gardening and a lot of workspace. You'll have everything from a nice wood bench. Got another picture coming. Oops. There's aluminum, plastic. In one of the pictures, you'll see plastic toppings on a wooden. Here they put a like a hardware cloth stretched tight over their wooden frame. And then here are these that have the pre-built in to their greenhouse, the aluminum bench structures, which are pretty cool. So overhead misters, mat irrigation, drip, and of course your water hose. We'll start off just showing a water hose, which is what I have in mind, just to help you water your plants. And I do. I go out and water them during the winter, sometimes once a week, twice a week. This overhead system I've seen mainly at the conservatories, like at the Botanic Gardens. And this is a drip siphon system to, not a drip, a siphon system to where once it siphons up here, it will siphon that whole mat. And you can barely see it here, but there is a plastic lining there so that you're not losing your wet, you know, that the heat that you might have on in that greenhouse doesn't evaporate all of it. Works out pretty well when you're doing just some of these little 4-inch pots. I haven't tried it with gallons or anything, but it does work well with 4-inch pots. This one, they're putting in a drip system here. They have installed a galvanized pole. The drip system is then strapped to your galvanized pole. And here she's installing a spot where you can either put a drip emitter. Here are 2 different types of drip. This one's running from the bottom up to the plant. And this one is from the hanging down. And then these, you can also install little spray head emitters so that you get kind of that effect that we saw in the picture earlier where the whole greenhouse was receiving mist. This way, this is the plastic bench top. This way, it's just getting that one whole bench will end up having spray emitters on it. Here's a hoop that was purchased, that the demonstration garden out here for the master gardeners helped put together. So when you saw the shade cloth earlier, it was this structure had the shade cloth on it. Now they're turning it into a greenhouse. So they're starting to lay out their cement blocks there to figure out what their base structure should look like, and came up with this. And here's a couple of them once they got all of it installed, because you know, you got to level that ground. All this had to be leveled out for them to put this in, just like when my structure was put in and we put the footing in cement. So you've got to level, make sure it's nice and level for you before you put that top structure on it. And here they come, walking it into place. It has been a fabulous greenhouse. Ours is covered in plastic. And then we put one of the shade cloths over it for summer. And this last couple of years, we've left it on winter and summer. In the winter, when we're not there, there's no electric on until we put in our benches with some heat mats. And the heat mats are our only electricity that runs in there for the winter. You can find some references on the Aggie Horticulture website. When you go under the greenhouse section, be sure to look at index and structure. And that's where you'll find some great information and reference to greenhouses under Aggie Horticulture at tamu.edu. But that's not all. You'll find some great resources out there. Everything from Greenhouse Grower Magazine, Texas Nurseryman Magazine has some really good information. The Greenhouse Product News Magazine, and we visit a lot on the website Greenhouse Megastore, that it has some great, all the parts really that you might need. There are a couple of good books out there. The Transforming Builder series, How to Build an Inexpensive Hoop House. And the second book that we've enjoyed is How to Build a 12 by 14 for about $300. Now, this was written a couple years ago, so y'all know prices have gone up a little, but you can still build one very inexpensively. And then here's, when you get this website, you could go back and read through all of these references, because it's just letting you know we look through and read a lot of everything, even from other master gardeners here in Clark County. And then our contact information. So I hope you've enjoyed the class, and I think Dick's going to help us out with some questions that we all might have. Dick, I'm going to stop share and just put it back to the regular screen. Is that fine?
Okay.
Yes.
If you have questions, please enter them in chat, and Claire will answer them for you. The only one I see so far, Claire, is Bob Siglin says he's read some PVC structures need to have white felt or tape on the contact surface to prevent contacting the plastic film, or the PVC material will degrade the plastic film.
Yes, there is a product out there, and it's not just for PVC, it's also for the galvanized structures. And you can cover the structure, especially right at the top of the roof span area, so that when you throw your plastic over, it doesn't rub. That's what it's referring to.
Okay. We're asking that people enter their questions into the Q&A. So if you would please put it in there, then we'll answer them for you.
And I know they'll get to go back and relook at this. So, if they've got questions, it'll give them that chance to relook at things.
Here's one from Carrie. How would you stake a PVC or light metal greenhouse so that in high winds they don't fly around or get blown over?
That's the hardest. My greenhouse actually came with 18-inch brackets that fit down into each corner. And so that's what you would need to do, is look at some rebar at possibly putting that in the ground and putting your PVC pipe over that rebar to help hold it down.
Okay. And Sharon, what about a flat roof? Will that work?
Every type of structure, because really a lot of us take our outdoor plants that we have that are considered a house plant and put them in the garage for winter. They want to be right around that 45 degrees. So if you've got just a nice little building that you can overwinter house plants, sun for the houseplant isn't near as important unless you're trying to start some vegetables, which is what I do. I have a heat mat where I try to start some seedlings early.
Okay. Amy wants to know what structures do best in high wind. Any particular shape better?
No. My sister in Denton has very high wind. She's got just the rounded. Mine is the span roof. Nancy's is Gothic. She might be in pretty high wind also with her open area. Some of it comes down to your question before this was making sure you've tied it down good. You've staked it in the ground so that you're not having to worry as much for that high wind.
Okay. Do you use screen in your vents, especially on the roof, to keep bugs and animals out?
There is one that's made available. I've seen it on Growers Supply, Farm Tech, and they even make it to where if your roof has an open vent, it will cover that whole space so that it can still open and then have just all this be screening. So yes, there is product out there available. I haven't put anything on mine. And the worst part is I get leaves blow in. So yes, you're constantly going out to reclose some of those vents to make sure that your leaves and other things aren't blowing in on them.
Okay. Is it realistic to have a small personal sized greenhouse with no electrical heat? Because he's worried about fire hazard.
Yeah. And Nancy might jump in on this. I haven't heard of anyone with a fire hazard. All the years that I volunteered out at the demo garden greenhouses, I haven't heard anyone mention a fire hazard. And the one where the lady built the lean-to on her back porch, she actually had the south facing. So she got morning sun in that to where it warmed it up a lot. I know y'all saw a little space heater in there for overnight, but with that morning sun, she was opening it up because it got too hot in there for the begonias. You know, they don't want it extremely hot, but they want it warm at night.
Yeah, Claire, as far as fire hazard, usually with those space heaters, it's all about where you place them, making sure that there's clearance around them, making sure that they're not going to tip over, those kinds of things. I think before you use a space heater in a small greenhouse, you definitely need to pay attention to all the recommendations that come with those space heaters to protect yourself against fire hazard.
Thanks, Nancy, because I forgot about that. It does come down to your level ground. And like Nancy said, making sure nothing's around it.
Right. And it depends on how small that greenhouse is, and again, whatever heater, you're using, take a look at what those recommendations are for safety, and see if your structure is going to meet those.
Thanks, Nancy.
Okay. Chad says, I was just wondering how the shadowing could affect the plant life in a wood-based greenhouse that you mentioned.
Yeah, and I even with mine wanted to mention that there are months where the shadowing from my pecan tree, I just went and got some shop lights. So I hung a couple shop lights over the area, especially where I'm putting seedlings, so that again, they get more direct light hitting them and they don't get so leggy that way. But the rest of the plants I don't light at all. It's their house plants, their understory tree plants for the summer, and I just let them, go into a little bit more dormancy because of less light.
Okay. Josephine says she doesn't have any questions, but she's from California and you're inspiring her. She says,
Okay.
I don't grow edible because of squirrels and rats, but maybe now I will.
Well, how exciting. I'm
Yeah.
glad you joined us.
So, Claire, I had one more thought about the person who asked about the danger of the space heaters, the small heaters. Sometimes, and I've done this myself, you can fill up 1 gallon jugs with water and let the sunlight warm that, and then put those inside that environment, and that will keep some areas warm.
I heard our extension agent mention that also. Thanks,
Yeah,
Nancy.
Steve Cheney talked about that. He's put these great big barrels in there, with hot water and yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the space for barrels, but I have used the 1 gallon, like a milk jug, several of those throughout the greenhouse, just to kind of help in certain areas that seem a little cooler, that don't seem to receive the heat from the space heaters when I have those on.
Cool. Well, hot, I guess. Okay. Bob Siglin really likes your presentation, Claire, as does everybody else.
Thank y'all.
Was shade cloth and ventilation enough this past summer to keep your greenhouse cool enough?
Well, my greenhouse was empty this past summer, so I had even all my succulents and cactus.
Yeah. So or would summers like this need the use of coolers?
Yes, you would need the swamp cooler or some type of fan to help really keep your plants a little bit happier. Now, the cactus and succulents will probably really love it still in there, even though it may get up to, that 110, 112. They were that temperature sitting out in the yard.
I'm going to jump in here as well. So this summer, because I had some health issues, I needed to keep more plants in the greenhouse longer than I would normally. And so before I had my surgery, I put in a misting system, which would lower the temperature. And so those plants survived actually really, really well during the worst heat of the summer. So they didn't run all the time, but I periodically would have them turned on just to kind of reduce the temperature. But there's also an exhaust fan in there, and there is a circulating fan if it was needed as necessary. But that misting system made a huge difference.
That's cool, Nancy. Maybe we'll get some pictures of it and add it in on this. That'd be fun.
It's not anything fancy. It was just enough, misting heads that would reach those plants and would reduce the heat temperature. So one option.
Okay. Carrie has another question. Would it be ideal to plant in the shade of a deciduous tree so that you get the shade in the summer and then the sun in the winter?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she's talking about a greenhouse and being in the shade.
Yes.
Under
And
deciduous tree.
Summer, because again, it comes down to our summer sun and where is it located in the sky. So in the summer, mine is morning sun, full, probably 2 o'clock in the afternoon, mine starts getting shaded. So again, I'm still hitting the hottest part of the day. So you just gotta take a look and see where, and if it fits your neighborhood association, if it fits, your city guidelines.
Okay. And Sky Franklin says, how well would a 6x8 greenhouse with no AC or heating do in Maryland?
That's a good question because
I mean, there's no power, just a hose and frost cloth and shade cloth.
Yeah, summer. Yeah. I don't know for winter because again, I've always either had a heat mat, something to help add that heat under some of the tender plants.
It may depend on what plants he's got in there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to grow, seedlings? Are you just trying to overwinter your plants?
Yeah, Maryland's pretty cold.
Very.
So that's where I couldn't figure out for winter how helpful. But for spring, you definitely start plants up earlier in there because your sun coming in is going to warm everything up so nicely.
Okay. One of the people here today said that they were at Lowe's and saw several small greenhouses on sale and clearance. So that may be a time to go check at Lowe's or if you want a greenhouse.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
This is a good time of year because you've got some beautiful plants out around your yard. You're ready to get them stored away and want to try to save them over the winter.
Let's see. Amber wants to know, do you have any recommendations on resources on what grows well in our greenhouse over winter? Texas heat kept me from using my aluminum frame greenhouse, so I'd like to use it over the winter.
And is hers also without electricity?
Don't know. It doesn't say.
Because our winter sun coming in should keep it fairly warm. You'd want to take numerous trips out there during the week just to check the plants if you don't have any heat at all, any electricity out there. But you should be able to keep a few. When you look at your plants, know whether they want to be lower than 45 degrees. If you've purchased a bunch of things you just haven't put in your yard yet, and they're perennials, you know they should survive, they're going to do fine for you. You can put them in that greenhouse, and your your winter sun coming in should keep them warm enough, and that they don't mind it being as cold. So that again, they would do great in there.
Okay. And in that, how many degrees does a greenhouse save in Texas winters? How much warmer will it keep it than the outside ambient temperature?
I think that depends upon your heat system for sure. Because for mine, I keep mine right around 45. I don't want it because I don't want to use that much electricity. I don't want it hotter. And I know that my begonias don't mind it right around 45. Now, when we had that really cold snap, yeah, I was going out there that next day just to see. I bought one of those little thermometers. It's, oh gosh, about a 3x5, and it'll tell you the high and the low for the day. And so that way I could see how low did it get in the night out there. One little space heater, I'd move it around to different locations so that, the next night I might have more heat on the other side of the building. But they all fared through it. I was real surprised.
Okay.
So, and so, Dick, it comes down to how much you're willing to pay for the heat in that greenhouse. And I didn't, I wanted just to make them happy, keep them
I
alive.
understand that, yeah. Okay. Over winter, would you try any seedlings? Or would you just try to grow veggies or flowers?
I do both because I do some for our demo garden greenhouse with Pat Higgins. We'll start selecting seeds and then I pick out others that I want to try, and along with my vegetables. I do everything from fennel to, I don't do basil. I do that at the demo garden greenhouse with Pat, but in my small one, I'll do all the others, everything from thyme to oregano. I did do tomatoes. I started them one year, the first week of January, and every one of them sprouted. So they love that cold night air when they first start coming up, but they love the heat mat to keep their soil warm. So they do great.
Yeah, probably if you used heating mats under your plants that you were concerned about, that would be all the heat you would need, wouldn't it?
Yes, that was all.
Yeah.
Heat mat.
Okay. That's all the questions I see, Claire.
Well, thanks, Dick.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, y'all. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.